Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Kmart, and I want to talk about some basketball. And today, we are taking a break from talking about the never ending drama that is the James Harden Philadelphia 76ers situation, and we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We will be talking about the in season tournament that's going to be having its uh, inaugural year this season, first season that they're implementing the new in-season tournament format. So we are going to be given a little preview of each of the groups. There are 3 groups per conference, 6 teams per group. So we're going to be going through them one by one, and we're going to be doing 2 things here, or I guess 3 things. First, I am going to be dividing the teams in each group into 3 categories here. Those categories being favorites, contenders, and Longshots in terms of their ability to win their group, right? To place first place there. After we've done that, separated those teams into those categories, I'm going to talk about one team that I think is most likely to overperform and maybe move up one of those categories. And then, of course, one team who are most likely to do the opposite and potentially disappoint and drop down a category based on their actual performance. So, with that in mind, we are going to take a look at the first group on the list here. It is Group A in the Eastern Conference. And this season, that group is composed of the Atlanta Hawks, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Detroit Pistons, the Indiana Pacers, and the Philadelphia 76ers. So, I know at the start I said we would be taking a break from the Harden talk. Technically speaking, that won't be 100% true because the 76ers are in this group, but we'll try to keep it short there. But those are your 5 teams: the Hawks, the Cavs, the Pistons, the Pacers, and the 76ers. So, with that in mind, we'll get into categorizing them here. We'll start at the top with the favorite section. And as of right now, I've got 2 teams in that section. That is the Philadelphia 76ers and the Cleveland Cavaliers. So we'll start with Philly. First and foremost, sort of for them, with or without Harden, the 76ers are still a fairly difficult team to sort of count out entirely here, right? I know there's a lot of talk around the situation right now, but the team on paper still looks pretty good. Behind a healthy Joel Embiid, I would still put this team ahead of most other squads in this group and in the Eastern Conference sort of head-to-head, which is the whole point of group play here for this in-season tournament. So, yes, they have some concerns, right? There are some concerns maybe about the depth of their bench at this stage after some of their guys left in free agency. There's obviously the concerns about James Harden, but so long as Embiid sort of plays at a high level and stays healthy, so long as guys like Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris don't just drop off a cliff in terms of their respective production, the 76ers are still one of the better teams in this group, regardless of what goes on with James Harden. If Harden does somehow bury the hatchet with Daryl Morey and plays for the 76ers at 100%, then there's really no doubt about them being one of the favorites to win this group. But even without him, if he's disgruntled or not playing with 100% focus or not playing at all, the Sixers are not a scrub team without James Harden, right? I think that's something that we need to keep in mind here. They're obviously better if Harden plays and plays at 100%, but even without him, most teams would still be wary of Philly for sure. But moving on to the other team in the favorites category, the Cleveland Cavaliers, they are looking pretty solid here. Barring any remaining offseason moves, there's still a couple guys floating out there in free agency. The Cavs should still be one of the sturdier squads in the East. Most of their core is entirely intact here. There were some rumors about trades in the offseason, but nothing came from those rumors. So you've still got Garland, you've still got Mitchell, you've still got Mobley and Allen down low. And the Cavs did take some steps to bolster their lineup a little bit in the offseason, right? They added Max Strus to maybe kind of up their outside shooting game a little bit, an area where they were pretty inconsistent, especially in the playoffs. So you get a little bit better from the outside. They picked up some backup for that star big man duo for Mobley and Allen. Obviously, when I say backup, I do mean sort of bench players here. No one who's ever going to come close to matching Mobley and Allen's production, but some guys who you could maybe rely upon to just give them a couple minutes of rest at a time without the wheels falling off, that sort of thing. So the Cavaliers just got a little bit better around the edges while keeping that main core of four guys intact here. Um, is that enough to beat the 76ers outright and just straight up win this group? Possible. I don't think we could say for certain as of yet because we still haven't seen anybody playing any games yet, but the moves that they've made combined with the continuity, bringing all four of those sort of star players back, is more than enough to make the Cavs dangerous in this group and more than enough to warrant their status as one of the favorites to win, right? Obviously, there is only one winner in each group. The top team from each group goes on to the next round, and then I think it's the best second place team in each conference gets the sort of wild card spot, to borrow terms from other sports. But the Cavs absolutely can either be one of the best, not one of the best, the best team in their group, or the team with the sort of second best record among the Eastern groups in general. So they are looking pretty solid right now. Didn't really rock the boat in the offseason, but for their sake, or in their situation, it's kind of a good thing. But that does it for the group of favorites. We move on to category number 2, which is contenders. And as of right now, I've just got the one squad in this section, and that is the Atlanta Hawks. So in terms of off-season moves, the Hawks were not really impressive here. They didn't add too much. In fact, the biggest headline that they had in the offseason was the fact that they lost someone when they sent John Collins to Utah. However, they still have that star duo. Trae Young and DeJounte Murray are incredibly sort of strong, athletic, dynamic guards, and they are going to provide to the Atlanta Hawks an explosive amount of offense. Defensively, that's maybe a little bit more of a mixed bag, but they bring a lot of firepower to the table, and the Hawks are hoping that by taking John Collins out of their roster and out of their rotations, they're going to free up maybe more opportunities and more possessions for Young and Murray to kind of take over games, right? If all of his touches get split, or John Collins' former touches get split between the guard duo, then they could see their numbers improve even further. But that's the risk that they're taking, because other than that, the Hawks didn't really do too much. I don't believe that the team improved this offseason in terms of the roster, or in terms of who's on the roster. So it's up to either one of Young or Murray themselves to just up their level of play and be that much better, or the Hawks are going to be looking at one of their maybe sort of younger guys, one of their draft picks, someone like Kobe Buffkin, or maybe someone like DeAndre Hunter, who just got a sort of extension kicking in here. They're going to be looking to one of those guys to sort of step up and be not the third part of a trio here, right? It's not going to be Young, Murray plus a third guy, but a third option at least, right? Young and Murray will still get the vast majority of your opportunities, but you're looking for someone to contribute, even if it's not much, even if it's 10 to 15 points or something, but to do so consistently and efficiently as that sort of third option behind Young and Murray. So not sure who that person's going to be yet, but that's who the Hawks would be looking at. But if they don't get that, they might be sort of middle of the road like they were last season, which is why they're in this contenders category. They have the potential, but I don't know if they have the expectation. But that moves us along to the final category here, and that is the Longshots, the teams that technically still could win this group, but don't seem very likely to do so. And this is where we'll find our final two teams, the Indiana Pacers and the Detroit Pistons. So for the Pacers, I like what they did in this offseason. They definitely added talent. They locked down the future, right? Halliburton got his big sort of contract thrown his way. They kept Miles Turner, things of that nature. So it's hard to believe that they won't be better this year than they were before, right? Based on what they've done in this offseason, based on the development of the guys that they have. The problem with that statement, saying that, they're going to be better than where they were before, is that where they were before wasn't really all that great. So it's a relatively low bar to clear to be better than not so great. And I think the most important factor for putting the Pacers here in the long shot section instead of maybe the contenders section is the fact that the in-season tournament comes so early in the season, right? Group play games begin in November. The finals are going to be played around like December or something, if I've got my schedule right. So it's unclear to me if the Pacers are going to pay off the theoretical improvements that we saw in this offseason early enough in the regular season to be in the mix here. By the end of the season, I think the Pacers are better off record-wise than where they were last year. But I don't know if that change will come early enough to be relevant to the in-season tournament. So that's really the gist of it. The Pacers will be better, but maybe not quickly enough. But as for the other team in this last section here, the Detroit Pistons, I mean, you kind of knew they were going to be here, right? The Pistons are still building something in Detroit. It just isn't fully clear what it is yet and what it's going to look like. They've got a lot of young guys on their roster. Last season with Cade getting hurt, they did just kind of punt the season, but they let all of those young guys sort of go out and play and see what they had. But now, Cade's coming back. The young talent had an extra year to develop. The Pistons are going to have to figure out their rotations a little bit more, going to have to figure out which guys are ones that they want to be pieces of the team looking over the long term, not just the next year or two. So a much more extreme version of what I was talking about with the Pacers. The Pistons are going to get better inherently just because of how bad they were last season, but I doubt that improvement will be significant enough or even fast enough to make waves in this group. So for the Pistons, improvement will come. I think it's just going to be very gradual for them. And that's probably something Pistons fans have been aware of for quite some time. But that does it for our initial categories here. Just to sort of recap, we've got the 76ers and the Cavs in the favorite section, the Hawks in the contenders section, and the Pacers and Pistons down there in the long shots section. So now we move on to the next little bit here. We're going to talk about one team that I think overperforms those expectations and one team that underperforms, or is most likely to over or underperform. Let's put it that way. And in terms of the team most likely to overperform, it's really got to be the Pacers here, right? I talked about it a little bit when I was going over the team, but I really like what I see right now from Indiana with the talent that they've added, with the core that they've sort of nurtured along here. It's relatively strong, right? You've got Hield, you've got Halliburton, you've got Miles Turner, and then you sort of add in some of these younger guys who have started looking a little bit more impressive. I think Benedict Mathurin, maybe he doesn't match his output in terms of a second season here, but he came out and really made waves as a rookie, and the Pacers do sort of have some of that young talent that I think can contribute relatively early, so long as they're not put directly in the spotlight, right? And they won't be, because guys like Hield, Halliburton, and Turner will sort of bear the weight of being the biggest names on the roster, and the young players are going to be able to just sort of contribute relatively quietly in a relatively low stress environment. But I think the thing to remember here for group play is that it's just 8 games, right? You play all the other 4 teams in your group twice. So an 8-game slice in the early stages of the season is not necessarily a reflection of where the team sits in the overall standings. And I think the Pacers have the best chance of beating those expectations and maybe sort of moving up into that sort of contending section here. I did mention when I was talking about the Pacers that I thought I was concerned at whether the improvement from this team would come fast enough to be relevant for the in-game tournament. And that is still a concern. But if the Pacers come out of the gates here and everything looks to be clicking well, that early momentum could absolutely propel them into a scenario where they are competing with Atlanta, with Philadelphia, with Cleveland, at least in terms of group play. Again, I don't know what their overall record will look like over the first few months, but in those head-to-head matchups, I think that they could hold their own. So, Indiana is the team that I would say is most likely to overperform based on where I had put them. In terms of the team most likely to underperform, this one actually did just change over the last couple of days. Originally, the team I had in that slot was the Atlanta Hawks, for all the concerns that I pointed out in their section just a little while back. But the recent situation, the recent debacle surrounding James Harden and the 76ers has kind of made this an obvious change and an obvious choice. Now, I did put them in the favorite section, even with the caveat that the Harden situation may not go great for them. But that was looking at a sort of middle of the road scenario here, right? That Harden may or may not come back, that the team could still be good without him. But if we look at this from worst case scenario, the 76ers could be in some trouble, right? If Harden doesn't play or doesn't play up to his full abilities, doesn't give it 100%, they could be in trouble. The team didn't bring much back in the way of off-season reinforcements. Their main headliners were Mo Bamba and Patrick Beverley, outside of re-signing some guys who were already there. So it could get concerning. Harden will be not happy. You know, you're going to be putting a lot more on the shoulders of Joel Embiid, a guy who was already carrying a lot of the workload for the 76ers in the past. And I mentioned when I was talking about them as a favorite that they were looking for consistent contributions from guys like Tobias Harris and guys like Tyrese Maxey. But if one of those things doesn't happen, then the 76ers, in terms of their level of play, could drop off fairly quickly, right? If Harden doesn't play, if Maxey or Harris don't manage to sort of have solid seasons or at least solid starts to their seasons, then the 76ers could absolutely fall from that favorites section and sort of drop down a little bit. I don't think that there's really a world where they finish in the bottom of this group, even in a worst case scenario, but there's definitely a scenario I see here where they don't make it out of group play if things do truly go bad with the Harden situation. So there you have it. In terms of most likely to disappoint or fall below, the 76ers are the team. In terms of most likely to exceed expectations or overperform, we're going to go with the Indiana Pacers. So that is what I've got here for Group A in the Eastern Conference. Obviously not the deepest dive in the world here, just kind of trying to go through and give first impressions because we're still like 2 months away from the start of the season, so we haven't gotten to see any of these new rosters in action. But from what we see on paper in the offseason, this is what I got. So feel free to let me know what you think here. What team did I overvalue? What team did I maybe overlook a little bit? If I just had to take a guess at which ones would be the most contentious here, it's probably the 76ers, the Hawks, and the Pacers. Don't know if people want them up or down. Well, I guess the 76ers have to go down because they're as high up as they can be. But yeah, feel free to let me know what you think. Who do you think is going to take this group in terms of finishing in first place, and why, I suppose, right? Other than just saying they're the best team, because yeah, that would be pretty obvious. But there you have it. We're going to be going through the rest of the groups over the next few days here. But other than that, thank you all so much for watching, and I will talk to you later.